Hello there, everyone. Welcome to AV Rant. This is the behind the scenes version. You're watching the live stream as we record this thing, so there could be audio dropouts, there might be video glitches. We're just using Google Hangouts here, and we'll be talking about images that you won't be able to see. So if you'd like a cleaned up audio for sure, and to be able to see the images we're talking about, look for the complete 2-hour video version that usually posts on Wednesdays. So yeah, with that, I'll flip on over to Tom, and he can start whenever he pleases.
Oh, I found a mood ring.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering what this was. It was green, and then I put it on. Now it's blue. This is what I'm going to be talking
Those
about.
Are cool.
For this. No, where the hell did that come from? It was underneath the sound absorber. I don't know. It's dusty in here. All right, ready? Wait, let me see what time it is. 2 minutes. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And I haven't asked in a long time. How's Daisy doing?
She's very well. I could go get her. She's asleep, but she's very well. She's big.
Oh, that's good.
She's quite orange.
Oh.
She's quite orange. But yes,
I'm quite expecting orange.
I was. I mean, she was slightly orange when we got her. I mean, she had a little bit of orange, but then she's very orange now. But she is settled in and she's happy. I need to figure out, and I probably should just ask somebody about the claws because they are substantial at this point and painful. So I like her hanging out with me, but she tries to crawl up the back of my head, which is just ooh. And if she starts falling off me, she'll latch on.
Of course.
I had like four, like 6 scratches on my arm where both of her claws were digging in as she was trying to keep herself from falling off at one point. But whatevs, it's worth it. So anyways, I take her outside sometimes, but she generally hangs out in her terrarium and in the house. You know, she'll go whatever. So she's doing well. If you guys don't know, Daisy is the AV Rant official bearded dragon. She was a Christmas present to my kids and to me, but mostly to me because my kids don't really like her that much.
That's how pets work.
That's why we didn't get a dog, because I didn't want to take care of a dog, and I don't mind taking care of a lizard. So this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. You can leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. Where you can leave us a comment that we will almost certainly ignore.
Yep.
Sorry. Don't blame us. Blame the rest of the people on YouTube who are awful. I have been thinking a lot about that lately. And for what wasn't there a push a while back that everybody should have to use their real names online?
Oh, yeah, there was some kind of legislation thingy that was proposed.
I really think that should be a thing. I got to be honest with you. This is what I think. I don't think you should have to use your real name. I think you should be able to use whatever username you want to use. But whenever you sign into your computer or to any sort of computer online internet stuff, you should have to like enter some biometric data, like a thumbprint, right? So that you as a person, no matter what username you use, has like a rating or a feedback section or something like that. Where
works so well for Uber.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't care, but I just feel like there has to be some accountability because people are awful. You just hear about the things that people do. When they don't like something you say, and then they say that you should die or get you raped or something. It's just awful. And then they downvote you for no reason.
They do.
YouTube. Thumbs down.
It's a small number of people. I think we can nip this all in the bud just by taking the 3 people at every movie.
Poople.
They are poopy.
Right.
They are poopy people. But we take the 3 people who ruin the movie experience at every single movie, and we just like sequester them on an island somewhere. And they're the same people. It's the same ones.
You think?
I think it is. I think these super self-absorbed, completely like don't care about anyone else, just care about themselves. I think it's all them. It's the same people.
Same people, huh?
They're the terrible drivers. They're the people who are horrible in line at Starbucks. It's all the same people.
Now, okay, since we're talking about that, Florida is well known for its people that can't drive, mostly because they can't see, mostly because they're real old, and or they come from other places where the driving rules are different. And I
Okay.
don't really blame people for that so much, where there's like mores about driving. Like if you see like in some places, if there's a funeral, everybody pulls over the side of the road. I would never do that. I grew up in California. We don't pull over for nothing. Everybody keeps going. If you're in the funeral's going on, and then everybody, and you're at a light, you let all the funeral people go through the light. That's fine. But I'm not pulling over the side of the road because you people are on the funeral. That's not something I'm doing. I got places to go. I will try not to slot into your funeral procession. Yes. But if I have to, I'll even turn my lights on, just for a little bit. Again. But today was like the day of the single most aggressive driving I've ever seen. Like 4 or 5 cars in a row, different drivers, different cars, different areas, were just like straight up. I was like, I'm going to watch this person die.
Yeah.
Any second now, they are going to crash into a median or slam somebody into something else. I've never seen, talking 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour difference from just trying to get 3 cars up. They would just stomp on it, go up 3 cars, slam on their brakes, and almost drive somebody off the side of the road. It was crazy. It was a nutty day. Anyways, so yeah, YouTube sucks. Then you can go to if you want to contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter's at First Reflect. Mine is Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. You can also contact our producer Austin, who we assume is still alive.
I haven't heard from him in months.
Yes, he's very. Our producer is been sequestered in a shack someplace where he is completing a video, or so we hope. So Austin, you can reach him at Austin Pond, Austin TEN, not TIN, like I thought it was. He has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast about mood rocks.
Of course.
Yeah, mood rocks and what the different rocks mean, the colors and stuff.
They respond to heat. Clearly, that tells you.
No, it's emotions. It's true. The real ones. They'll talk about the fake crap that you buy at the novelty stores. They talk about the real ones.
Okay.
The real ones. The ones that you come with the crystal stores. The stores where that sell the crystals and the energy healing things. Those are the real ones. We watch movies.
Yep.
All right, listeners of the week. Looks like, guys, we're going to thank our 58 patrons over at Patreon. They have signed up for patreon.com, who are there. We have 56 of them right now. Every month, Patreon takes out a amount of money that they determine. I think it's at least $1 a month, $12 a year to listen to this podcast. Woo!
Yep.
And then, you can listen to it for free too. And really, I don't blame you. That's what I'd probably do.
That's what most people are doing.
I appreciate every one of you, all 56 of you that are.
Oh, it's 57 right now. It was 58 when I wrote up the show notes. You keep saying 56, and it is actually 57 as we record.
Okay, I want to tell you. I don't know if you're watching the YouTube video, you'll notice that I'm quite a bit lighter. I've changed the lighting, and I am totally going blind right now. And they're so bright.
Beam of sunlight right into your eyes. Yes, patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you would like to support us financially. You can also go to AVRant.com and click on the support the podcast, buy us a cup of coffee link. If you'd like to send a PayPal donation and you do not need a PayPal account, you can just use a credit card.
That's right.
Or you can use a PayPal account. And
if you can't support us financially, which we completely understand, if you think of some other way to support us, just let us know and we will mention you on the podcast. So first we're going to mention Heath. Heath talked us up to AV Science and SVS when he purchased his JVC projector, Seymour Screens Excellence acoustically transparent screen and dual SB4000 subwoofer. AV Science, AVS, AV Science. Well,
they used to, that's where the AVS forum came from, was AV Science. But since then, AVS forum has separated from AV Science. AV Science is still a retailer. AVS forum is completely its own separate thing now. But AV Science is a great retailer, especially for JVC projectors. So that's where we sent him. And congrats, Heath, and thanks for talking us up.
Yeah, Ted's wife bought him a Denon X4400H for his birthday, and she let Accessories for Less know that was because of us.
Yes, that's awesome.
You know,
thank you, Ted's wife.
No kidding. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
My wife never bought me a receiver.
She
I did
knows
have a
what's up.
girlfriend buy me a pair of speakers one time, but they were Bose. At the time, I was very happy.
Yeah, sure.
In retrospect, whatever. Chris bought a Murad's SR6011 from Accessories for Less and 5 horn-loaded in-wall speakers from HSU. He let both of them know that we recommended them, so that's great.
Thank you, Chris. Congrats on those purchases.
Caesar told Monoprice that his speaker wire purchase was because of us, so thank you, Caesar.
Yes, thank you very much, Caesar.
And if you remember last week, I mentioned that my son was trying to build or was thinking about building a gaming PC. So I had a couple listeners contact us, contact me. Ron, Patrick, and McMansion Chris all wrote messages to help my son build his gaming PC. And Patrick even offered to give me a slightly older but still very capable graphics card, which was interesting. Okay, first of all, I have had no time to look at these emails. I have looked at them. I've read them, skimmed them mostly, but I've read them, and then I have forwarded them to my son as of like an hour ago. He just got them. So he is now looking at them. I did take out the part where Patrick offered to give me the graphics card because I don't want him to know that.
Gotcha.
Because I want him to still shop and figure out how much all this would cost. Patrick is sending that graphics card is on the way. I got the tracking information today. So thank you very much, Patrick, for that. And for Chris and Ron, yes, it's going to be kind of everything. So some of you, they in particular, but other people too, were kind of wondering, why does it have to be a P? Okay. Yes, I know that he wants to play Overwatch. That's what he wants to play right now.
Right.
I don't know what he wants to play in the future. The girl that he met that he wants to play games with, she only will play on PC.
Gotcha.
So it has to be a PC. It can't be a console game. Her brother plays on console, but she only plays on PC. So he is interested in PC. I don't think that we need to have like top of the line so that we can hook an Oculus Rift in there. First of all, I'm kind of creeped out about the whole Oculus Rift owner people being so weird. So I'm a little off Oculus Rift right now, even though if somebody gave me the opportunity to try it, I would totally try it.
Sure.
But I don't think we're going to be going in that direction. I think what he needs is a capable gaming PC for now, that if a year from now or 2 years from now it's started chugging a little bit because it was just barely doing what it could with Overwatch, I think that would be a good experience for him as well. Plus, I'm using this as motivation for him to get a job. He is 14 years old and he can work. He can work at the local supermarket. They hire young kids all the time to do like stuff. So I am stuff, most I think in carts and stuff like that too. But yes, I am very, so this is all very good, and any help that you give, advice or whatever, like I didn't know that graphics cards are like in short supply because of Bitcoin.
Yep, pretty much.
I had no idea.
Cryptocurrency mining, that's a big...
I had heard about that, but I had no idea that it was like a new graphics card comes out and they're all completely bought immediately. Yeah. And I mean, how are you just not printing money if you're like NVIDIA or Intel or whoever
they kind of are? Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I would never run out. I would make a bajillion of them. I would just constantly. Anyways, so this graphics card offer from Patrick was it was like really well timed because Ron said, hey, graphics card is going to be your big expense because of this, and like 24 hours later Patrick was like, hey, I got a graphics card, you want it? I'm like, yeah, apparently I really do. I had no idea, but I do, so that's really great.
Yeah, so Ron, Patrick, Chris, thanks for helping out Tom's son.
We really appreciate it. In the news via Larry, our listener Larry, Cinema.
Like it's like cinema except with an S, and then it's not a ma, it's a mia. So Cinemia.
Cinemia, whatever, is a rival service to Movie Pass, which I can't remember what Movie Pass does. What is it too? Is it like a
next sentence?
Like okay. You sign up for a monthly subscription that lets you get movie tickets at a discount. Unlike Movie Pass, Cinema, which is stupid to say, sets a limit on how many tickets you can get from them a month, but that has to stop Movie Pass from suing them in the USA since their app and service are so similar. Movie Pass isn't available in most other countries, though. So Cinema, whatever, which is based in Turkey, is expanding. So I support this because my wife is half Turkish. They recently launched in Canada, offering 2 tickets or 3 tickets per month for $10 or $15. That's pretty good, dude.
I know.
3 tickets for $15.
That's right. It's a very
Canadian, but how in American? That's only like $1.50, I think. And one of those tickets can be any sort of premium ticket, even a 3D D-box showing that normally costs $25 Canadian all by itself. They say they plan to eventually turn a profit by targeting their users with ads and hopefully forming partnerships with theaters to help boost concession sales. Yeah, get them while they're hot. That's what I say, because this was
Well,
going to
yeah.
last for a while.
I don't know if I would sign up for the pay it all up front for a year, because I have no idea how long they're going to be around. But on a month to month, I might give it a try. Why not try it for 1 month? $15 for a month? Why not? Especially in the summer.
Movie Pass? Is Movie Pass like a lot more expensive?
Movie Pass, I think, is I forget. They've changed their prices so many times, but
Yeah. Now that you tell me oh, Rob, I forgot to plug in my computer.
What, power?
Yes.
You're all proud for having plugged in the internet hardwired.
I plugged in everything else.
All right, well, you do that. I'll read the next news story.
No, I'll keep going. Once we get into the questions, once you start answering something, I'll go. All right, Antoine, JVC, Antoine, the more news. JVC is launching the LXUH1, a 4K DLP projector for $25. We just said like 2 podcasts ago that $2,500 for 4K wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Anyways, here it is.
Well.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, it uses the 4 million pixel DLP chip that is wobbled to create 8 million pixels, same as the Optima UHD 65. They're only claiming Rec 6709 color, 2,000 lumens, and 100,000 to 1 dynamic contrast. But the differentiator is having both horizontal and vertical lens shift, although it's manual lens shift, which really, let's be honest, who cares?
Yeah, well, if you want to do the whole 2 screen sizes and zoom in, zoom out, then you need the motorized lens stuff.
No one
so
wants to do that.
It doesn't have that. Lots of people want to do that. So I still am not super on board with this. I mean, it's very similar to what Optima already has out there, very similar in price as well. And it's mainly that it doesn't do the wide color. It's Wobble K, although it's the 2 wobbles per frame instead of the even lower priced $1,500 ones that are 4 wobbles per frame. But it's that it doesn't do the wide color. They're stuck at Rec 709 here with these DLPs. Yeah. So yeah, I'd still go for an Epson. I honestly would. I'd go for the Home Cinema 4000 still.
59% on my battery here. Chris ordered the inexpensive monoprice 9723 subwoofer. Just so easy to say. A 12-inch sub that Brent Butterworth picked as the best budget subwoofer from the wire cutter. Sadly, the build quality seemed very poor. 2 of the feet had stripped screws and the RCA jack was loose. He tried playing it and it was abnormally quiet, gave essentially no output below 35 hertz, and he got a hum as well. It's almost certainly a damaged or defective unit, but he was disappointed and unimpressed by how cheap it felt overall. He'll be returning it in favor of a Bic F12 instead.
I mean, it is a $100 sub. So
yeah, I'll be honest with you. The last time I bought a $100 sub, I returned it twice before I finally figured out it just sucks, and I was stuck with it. There's nothing else to do. So,
yeah. Again, I mean, as far as $100 subs go, it's probably one of the better ones. But it is
clearly the one he's got is not.
Oh yeah, that's defective. Yeah,
that's defective.
That ain't right.
The $100 you're getting what you're paid for there for sure. Bob says thanks for our speaker recommendations and the Atmos installation suggestions for his open living room / dining room / kitchen space. He'll be getting a new 5.1 speaker set to start and repurposing his JBL satellite speakers for Atmos as we suggested. But he wanted to let us know that we convinced him to move his big L-shaped couch about 3 feet off the back wall. He's enjoying the result. And you know why he went 3 feet instead of like a foot? Vacuum cleaner, you can actually get it.
Yeah, you can walk behind there. So yeah, I didn't have new photos, but I'm showing the old photos where his old setup. So he was very close to the back wall previously. Yeah. So now he's closer to his TV that we thought was too small and farther away from that back wall. All good stuff.
2 ways to fix it: you buy a bigger TV or you get closer to the small one. Those are your options. Noah wanted to suggest monoprice's projection screens as a possible alternative to Elite screens. If anyone was concerned after Justin's bad experiences. What?
Well, remember how a week or 2 ago Justin was saying you had some bad experiences with Elite screens.
Oh, right.
So Noah's just saying Monoprice sells screens too that are inexpensive, cheaper than everyone else. So maybe they're an alternative. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, the one to mention that Monoprice offered a multi-format frame option with manual shutters at the top and bottom to turn a 16:9 into 2.35 to 1 screen. He loves his, and they're still listed on Monoprice's website, although only as open box and only in the 106-inch size right now. So either they're waiting for the next container to come from China,
Right,
or they're never going to
or it's
offer them again.
discontinued. Yeah, I'm not sure which is the case. So that's
Well, now that we're in a trade war or whatever, who knows what's going to happen in the future here.
Things are uncertain.
I know that you told me that every time I do something on my computer, it messes up my sync with my audio, but I have to open up the AC thing because in 34 minutes, the AC is going to turn itself off. 56% left in the battery. Yep. Joseph on Twitter, since we mentioned the Focal birds and little bird speakers quite often, but we also mentioned how the birds are way bigger than you might think. He thought it might be helpful to share his photo of their size comparison with an SVS Prime satellite speaker, which is about 9 inches tall, 5 inches wide, and 6 inches deep. So I guess we're showing that right now.
We are. You'll want to check out the complete 2-hour version of the YouTube video if you want to see the image there. But yeah,
I'll be dead honest with you, dude. They look bigger in person than that this picture makes me think. You know, I mean, I'm looking at this, I'm going, oh, look that big. They're bigger than that.
Well, the little bird is quite reasonable. I mean, the little bird is visually smaller than the Prime satellite, and the Prime satellite is kind of the size 9 by 5 by 6. So it's that compact size. But the bird is definitely bigger than the Prime satellite. And if you were just looking at the bird in photos, you might think it's about the size of the little bird, when in fact
that's what I thought.
Quite a bit larger.
Yeah, way bigger. I mean, it's like a bookshelf speaker, really. I mean, but it's a small bookshelf speaker, but it is a bookshelf speaker. When you put the stand on it, it's as tall as a bookshelf speaker. Let's get into the questions here. We're going to start with Chris. Chris has got a bunch of questions, so
many.
Get these as quick. Yeah, we're going to be here for a bit. So, Chris, there you go. Chris says, let's say two subs are identical in every way except for driver sides. Would there really be a noticeable difference in performance or tone, or does strictly driver size not really matter all that much? It's very hard to say. First of all, I don't know that. I mean, first, the amplifier that you're using to power the speaker, the driver itself, that's a different driver, which has different parameters, which is a different size. So it's a different weight and different everything. So, there are going to be out of the box performance differences just in that matching right there. I don't know that I would say tonally you would hear differences.
That's pretty unlikely.
There's definitely other differences that you would experience, and probably how low they would play, how loud they could play. More likely how loud they could play would be probably the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying identical in every way, which is a hypothetical. But to me, that means even though these drivers are different diameters, they have the same impedance. They have the same efficiency. They have the same amount of excursion, and that is the thing that's going to change things. Because if you have two different diameters, but they both have equal excursion, then the larger one is going to displace more air. It's moving back and forth just as much as the smaller one, but it has more surface area. So it is going to displace more air. That said, if this is a sealed box and it's the same sealed box for both, then you have a confined sealed amount of air within that box. And if it's a ported box, then the tuning of the port is going to be equal in either case. So the differences would be small in this scenario, but there could be some actual difference in the amount of displacement of the air just due to greater surface area, which more or less translates into a tiny bit louder. Tiny bit.
I mean, subwoofers are such a unique case when it comes to home theater. We all kind of understand how speakers work. I mean, at a basic level, I think everybody sort of gets it. It moves in and out, pushes some air, makes some sound. But subwoofers, because they're omnidirectional because of how low they're playing, they don't operate sort of in the same, they're a completely different animal.
Yeah, well, this comes up quite a bit when people are asking about and aren't necessarily telling us all the details of their room at the same time, because it's the mentality of, I'm going to get a different product and I expect that different product to sound different.
Right.
Which is completely the way almost everything else works. Your speakers, you get different speakers, they sound different. But the subwoofer is so intrinsically coupled to the room in which it's playing that it's a different scenario with a subwoofer, and it's not intuitive.
I think it's interesting too, because we don't often talk about this with displays, but the fact of the matter is a properly calibrated display when you're comparing displays to different displays, should look very similar.
Very, yes.
They should look very similar. Where we're worried about the differences is, first of all, we used to be very worried about whether or not you could even calibrate the thing to get it close.
That's right.
But now we don't worry about that as much because everybody sort of got that thing on lock. But now we're worried about black levels and color gamut and stuff like that,
and
color
peak brightness for HDR.
And brightness,
because these are hardware limitations that will be different from brand to
but
brand and unit to unit.
If you were to ask us which one is going to give me the most accurate picture, we'd be like,
like the most accurate color or something.
They're all sort of, they're giving you, if you give it to 4K, it's going to put out a 4K image, and it's going to be, the lines are all going to be in the same place. I mean, there's not going to be those sorts of differences. So it is sort of, to me at least, the displays and subwoofers, that sort of performance of you're like, well, which one's going to sound better? Well, they're going to sound the same, but one's going to play lower if you have it properly calibrated,
or a bit louder.
Right? Anyways, or louder, right? So what are the pros and cons and differences between sealed and ported subwoofer designs? And what about cylinders? What differences do those have? I mean, this is really, size it's really with it's a design choice. So why would you choose one design over the other? Well, what is the application for the sub? If the application that you're designing the sub for is, I need a sub that I can put in a small room, therefore I want a small sub, therefore it doesn't have to play as loud as it would if it was going to be in the bigger room, which means I can make a smaller sub, which means I can maybe make a sealed one.
And in a small enclosed room, you're also going to get more room gain, which is the sound bouncing back and forth across the walls and the ceiling and the floor of your room. So as you play lower and lower, you're going to get more and more reinforcement from the room itself in a small enclosed room. Let's
pretend for a second that we have two subwoofers. Don't worry about price or drivers or any of that nonsense. Let's just say we have two subwoofers that can legitimately play to 20 hertz, but not much past it. One is a ported design and one is a sealed design. And you put them in a room. I mean, you stack them on top of each other. You put them in a room where they can give adequate output to get to reference volume in that room.
Right.
So what is the difference between the sealed one and the ported one? And the answer is, to your ears, nothing.
Right.
They should be the same. They should sound the same. You should have the same experience.
In that setup.
In that room. That's right. Now, why do we care about there being a ported design versus a sealed design? Because we're not all in the same room. And somebody comes to me and says, my theater area is 8 feet wide and 12 feet long, and it's got 8-foot ceilings. Yeah. Is it open to anything? Oh, yes. To everything. Yeah. To the rest of the house. You're like, okay, well, somebody who actually has an 8-foot wide, 12-foot deep, 8-foot high room that's enclosed, those are two different subwoofers. If you want to get the same experience. So the differences are in where you're going to put them and how much output they're going to have and that sort of thing. Now, there are subwoofers that are more accurate than other subwoofers and all of that.
Yep, but some have faster transient response, but that can be due to the driver design and the amplifier design as well. So there's other variables.
That's right, and there can be the quick, sealed subwoofers are quicker than ported ones. That's
often, but not always. Yeah.
And all that can be designed around. And there's reasons for using one design over the other and all of that. So when you look at somebody like SVS, they can make a subwoofer sound good regardless of whether or not it's ported or sealed. So, or played well, regardless of whether or not it's ported or sealed.
Yeah, the sealed sub has a contained layer of air that doesn't escape, and it acts a little bit as a spring. And all of the sound in a sealed sub is coming from only the driver. So you're getting all the sound coming from only the driver, and then as it tries to move back and forth more and more and more to play louder, it is working against that air. Air is a contained thing in behind it there.
So as it's pulling into the subwoofer, it's having to compress that air, which is hard. And then while when it's going out, it's creating a vacuum, which expands the air in there, and it's working against that vacuum, which is also hard. Which is why you often see a big sub with ports having a smaller amp than a small sub that is sealed. Because that small sub needs that extra oomph in the amplifier section to work against that air on the inside.
Yeah.
The reality is, though, if you get a sub for your room that can adequately pressurize your room, it doesn't matter if it's sealed or ported. It's going to sound virtually basically the same, as
Yeah,
long as
people
the
like to overgeneralize and talk about one is just better than the other or whatever. No, they have some different characteristics, and it's all about coupling it to your room and getting the right design and the right size and the right price and all the things. That's why it's not one size fits all, not by
and
any
when
long shot.
when you're going from a box to a cylinder, what are the differences there? I mean, it's just how much internal volume do you want? How much floor space do you have? That's basically what it comes down to. The air inside or the subwoofer, the driver doesn't care if it's in a round container or a square container. It certainly doesn't make any difference. The physics of it don't change. I mean, I think cylinder subs are slightly cheaper to make, to be honest with you.
Well,
because
it's an efficient shape because
Yeah.
Most cylinder subs are ported, and just by virtue of it being something that you can make a small footprint but rather tall, then you can have a long port because you've made it very tall. So you have a long port, and that's easy. You don't have to bend the port tube inside of a box or something like that.
That's right.
Plus, being this round shape, it evenly feels, so the pressure when the subwoofer driver is moving inside or pulling out, that pressure is applied evenly to this round shape. So you don't need bracing inside of a cylinder. It's a more efficient design, and therefore you can usually make it for less money than a similar internal volume of a square box, which would need bracing and probably a bit more material and more glue and all that type of stuff. So it's more efficient, but it's performance-wise doesn't have to be any different at all.
Yes, since Tom and Rob both have Atmos speaker setups, what do we prefer, or what do we do when the content is a 5.1 soundtrack? Do we upmix to make use of all of our speakers? Do we play it straight using only 5 speakers? What are the pros and cons of upmixing? Okay, so the pros, at least from my perspective, the con of upmixing is that you're relying on the algorithm that's within the receiver to extrapolate from the 5.1 or the 7.1 soundtrack overhead sounds. Now, by most accounts from people who have paid attention to such things, the Dolby Up mixer does a pretty good job of that. And my experience has been that I cannot be bothered to turn off the Dolby Up mixer when it's 5.1. If I'm doing critical listening, I'm listening to a track that utilizes all the speakers, or I'm listening to a 2-channel track where I will listen to it in 2-channel. I am almost never listening to a 5.1 movie trying to critically listen to a 5.1 movie. I'm usually critically listening to, a couple of speakers or a subwoofer, or, it's usually just a couple of speakers.
Yeah, I've got my front wide speakers, so I tend to use the DTS Neural X up mixer, since the Dolby Surround up mixer doesn't put anything into the front wide speakers. Overall, I do kind of, especially for, say, music, usually prefer the Dolby Surround up mixer if I'm going to upmix it. But I want those front wides playing, so DTS Neural X it is, and maybe I'll bump down the trim level of the overhead speakers a little bit because it does tend to goose them. But yeah, for the most part, I tend to upmix things. Stereo music, I mean, I don't do a ton of music listening in my theater, to be honest. So yeah, sometimes I upmix, sometimes I don't. But more often than not, I'm upmixing.
My power cable is right there.
Right. I mean, I can do the next part here.
No, we're gonna find a place where it'll make sense. 43%. Chris has a 1080p projector in the Atmos setup. He's noticed that more and more Blu-ray releases only have 5.1 or 7. They don't have 5.1, 7.1, while the 4K Blu-ray has an Atmos or DTS X soundtrack. What's the best, cheapest way for him to be able to watch the 4K discs on his 1080p setup with Atmos audio? Better to use a standalone player, or should he upgrade his PC so he can make MKV backups and play them via Plex? I mean, for $200, dude, you can get the Sony UDP X700 that I have.
Yep,
and that's literally the best. I mean, I don't know that
it's working well for you. You can tell us.
Well, I mean, it's okay.
The colors and the contrast don't look all screwed up. I mean, that's
no. It looks fine. And the only thing that's ever bothered me on it is that the apps that are connected to it are like wonky and flaky. Okay. So we had the problem with playing the audio, right? Well, now YouTube won't load anymore. I have no idea why. I can't get it to load. It just says YouTube constantly. So I don't know. Maybe Sony's in a battle with YouTube about something. But I think that's the easiest way. You're just going to get a standalone player and go with it.
Yeah, I would say get one of the Sonys, either the X700 or the X800. The X800 is a little bit nicer and it's older now, but it won't do Dolby Vision. So if you're planning on getting a TV that's going to do Dolby Vision, but if you're using a projector, you're never going to get Dolby Vision as far as we know. Right. So yeah, the X800, if you can find it for cheap, That would be a really good choice. It lets you manually set how the tone mapping is done for the HDR. I wouldn't really recommend doing this via backups. I've tried this myself now that I've backed up a few 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays, played them back via Plex on my 1080p TV, and it doesn't do the HDR to SDR conversion properly. It's the contrast is all blown out, and the colors are a bit wonky too. So I wouldn't really. I mean, I'm sure at some point they'll get it working, or there probably is software already of some sort that's working. But right now, Plex on your PC isn't doing a great job of it, and on the NVIDIA Shield isn't doing a fantastic job of it either. So I would suggest getting one of the Sony players.
He says the BenQ HT2550 4K DLP projector is enticing at under $1,500. This is a four.
The four wobbles per frame one. Yeah.
Should he consider it, or should he only look at more expensive 4K projectors? Also, he'd like to be able to watch 3D Blu-rays. Good luck. But so would the 3D glasses that he has for his BenQ HT2050 still work with the new projector? I don't know that any projectors are still supporting 3D. Is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. The Epsons are. The JVCs are. Yeah.
Okay, they are.
The Sonys still are too. Yeah.
The BenQs are not something you're saying right now, so I'm starting to think the BenQs aren't the ones that.
Well, yeah, these 4K DLPs for the most part aren't supporting 3D anymore. Too many wobbles.
Yeah.
But
that's a lot of wobbling.
The $1,500 ones, I can't get behind them. They're not doing the wide color. All the reviews are saying the HDR essentially looks no different than SDR, so it's compatible with it, but you're not seeing the HDR. Not great black levels, a halo of light around the whole screen. I mean, it's not great. So if you want an inexpensive one, the black levels are not fantastic on the Epson Home Cinema 4000, but they're better than these DLPs, and everything else about it is better too, particularly HDR and the wide color. Yeah, so that's the sort of the least expensive one that I would recommend. That one can do 3D, but you'd need HD 4000. I'm not sure if that does. The 5040 UB does 3D, but you'd need different glasses because your BenQ HT 2050 uses DLP Link to synchronize the glasses, so that will only work with DLPs. So if you do transfer to an Epson or something, you'll need new 3D glasses.
He asks, where's a good place to get wall plates for speaker wire, subwoofer, and HDMI connections that have been run in wall? He wants a 7.2.4 configuration plus HDMI. He's found some 3-gang plates that have enough connections for 7.1 plus HDMI, but those won't quite do it. Do we have any suggestions? So when I was first... when I installed my first wire, in-wall wires at my home theater in Jacksonville, when I lived in Jacksonville, I bought almost everything from a company that is called like Westgate Electronics. Now, I don't know that they still sell to the public. It was like a clearinghouse. Like you could find Blue Jeans cables. Like Blue Jeans bought from them.
Okay.
Because I could find like the Blue Jeans white jacketed Belden speaker wire. I actually mentioned to the guy, I'm like, oh, I see that you guys are selling this white jacket. Oh, that's not supposed to be up there. Hold on a second. Like, okay, oops, sorry, oops, okay. So, but there are like the last time I bought stuff for here, I got it all off of Amazon, and it's just a matter of going through all the plates and figuring out the ones that work for you. And just because you can't get one all in one box, because he wants 7.2.4 plus HDMI in one double gang box. I don't know that you're going to be able to find that, but you should be able to find it within 3.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but well, Blue Jeans Cable, you just mentioned them. They do sell just blank wall plates, and then you just put in, the little, you can fit like 6 little holes in a single gang wall plate, and then you can put in binding posts or
that's
RCAs.
The one I got with the snap-in ones, where you basically it's like 6 or 9 in there or whatever,
right.
and you just that's what I did.
And then they have separate HDMI wall plates too, so it's not going to be the all together in one nice 3-gang box thing. But if you're okay with individual single gang ones, you can make whatever configuration you need.
Then you can find the double gang ones of that too, the snap-in ones, because that's what I got. So you get a double gang one and probably the HDMI by itself, and I think that pretty much cover you. So Chris was about to purchase 500-foot spool of bulk speaker wire from Monoprice. That's a lot of wire, dude. $165 for 500 feet of 12-gauge CL2 in-wall rated wire seemed like a nice price, but before he pulled the trigger, he checked Amazon and found a listing for NavPoint CL2 rated speaker wire, still 12 gauge, still 500 feet for only $71. Any reason to spend nearly $100 more for the Monoprice wire? I have not seen, and there's no link here for me to look at it, but I have not seen that post.
Sorry.
But if there, the one I would do a modicum of research to make sure that they were actually selling what they said they were selling. But I would totally jump on that, to be honest with you.
Well,
Because if it's CL2, then it should be, if it is UL rated, it should be fine.
The difference is the monoprice wire is copper and the nave point wire is aluminum.
Is it aluminum?
Yeah. So that accounts for the difference in price. Now, there's nothing wrong with aluminum wire. It's fine.
No.
It's very electrically conductive. It's a little bit more brittle. Usually, if you strip the wire, because it's like the copper-clad aluminum where it has like a little tinning of copper on the outside, if you strip the wire and handle it with your hands will turn black. It can be very dirty stuff, so you'll want to terminate it, but there's nothing wrong with aluminum wire. It's fine. So if you want to save the money, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I would have no problems with that. Chris asked HSU how large a backer box should be for their horn-loaded in-wall speakers. They said they didn't list the numbers in any of their specs, but they calculated it for him and said an internal volume of roughly 585 cubic inches would be ideal. They said to make a box with approximately that internal volume and then line the inside of it with some fiberglass insulation. That sounds awfully familiar. So 585 cubic inches of internal volume. What would the actual dimensions of the box he'd need to build? Well, it's 1 inch by 1 inch by 585 inches.
That would be one way to do it.
That
I
would
wouldn't
do
suggest that.
That
I don't know where
actually
the internals of the speaker are going to go.
I didn't say that would work though.
It would. The math would work out.
Yeah, while you're telling him this, I'm going to go plug in my computer.
All right.
I have 36.5% left.
So normally the standard construction for your walls, and you'll want to check before you don't build all the boxes and then open up your walls and discover that, oh, there's something in the way. So you'll want to check what's inside your walls first, but normally your studs are 16 inches on center, and they're usually 2x4s. So 2x4s are in fact 1.5 inches wide and 3.5 inches deep, and then 16 inches on center means that you're losing 1.5 inches. So the actual width of the bay is 14.5 inches. So you could make a box with external dimensions that are 14.5 inches wide, 3.5 inches deep, which will be the entire depth of the bay, and that would leave you then 15.5 inches in height. That would be the size of the box. Now, that would completely fill the bay within that height. It would be the entire width of the 16-inch on center 2x4 and the entire depth. But then it would have to be 15.5 inches high. That leaves you in internal dimensions, assuming you're using half-inch thick material, half-inch thick plywood, which would be the normal thing to use here. So internally be 14.5 by 13.5 by 3, which gets you 587 cubic inches.
By 3. So you're just talking about putting some wood on top of the bay itself and then capping it off at the sides, right? That's what you're talking about.
Well, I was putting a back on it too, in case you want to.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's what I would do. So Bloomberg posted a video spotlighting Oswald's Mill Audio. They make record players, tube amps, and conical horn loudspeakers that cost $300,000.
They do.
They are neighbors of Martin Guitar. I don't know who Martin is. Is that make me a bad person? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, they claimed in the video that Martin Guitar are the best guitars in the world, just flat out. I'm sure there were people who would probably have different opinions than that.
I feel like that's not true. Or maybe subject to some discussion amongst guitar purists. Yeah. Maybe they are. I mean, I've never heard of them, so maybe that's what makes them so
they just
good.
Said flat out they're the best. Okay.
Anyways, they source the same Pennsylvania hardwoods to make their speakers. So whatever, if you make this wood.
Oh yes, they talked about the tonality of the wood.
They said
the tonality of the
slate that they use too. So let's just take all this with a grain of salt. Anyways, Chris wants our take on their video. He's never heard of this brand. Of course, you haven't. You don't have $300,000 to spend on speakers. And the video struck him as feeling high and mighty and holier than thou. I did not get that feeling, but let's talk about this. Are they just spouting a bunch of nonsense, or is there really something worthwhile to the various claims made in the video? So some of the claims that they source their slate and it's special soft slate instead of hard slate. Didn't realize there was differences in slate hardness, but the hard. I mean, it sounds like it could be a case that there is whatever softer slate, but that it would absorb resonances better, which sounds like bull to me, but let's just go on. They talked about the wood and how the wood they make a lot of horns out of woods, and the speakers they make are very. I mean, they're beautiful. They're very
not to my taste. That's not the look I would go for,
but come on, man, they're works of art. Let's be honest, they really are. They might not you might not like the art, but you can. I
can appreciate the craftsmanship.
The craftsmanship is there. So I did not take this as a holier than thou or high and mighty. I took it more as I am trying to convince you to spend $300,000 on a speaker. These are the reasons why. And I mean, honestly, they didn't come up with terrible reasons. I mean, he's sitting in his Brooklyn studio place that sells the things, right? And he's got speakers all around him that look like crazy, things that you would never actually buy because no one's got that much room in their house for them, because they're huge too, of course, because they're
massive,
all big ones. But then he's got like just oodles of recording and playback devices from all across time. So everything from record players to reel to things that look like he just found in the garbage someplace. But he's like, well, some sources have just never been improved.
That's right.
Some things have never gotten better. We have new things now because they're more convenient, but they're not necessarily better than what we had before. To which I say, bull. they are better by definition. They are better because everything you have degrades over time, and my ones and zeros are always going to be ones and zeros.
Objectively more accurate to the source. Yes.
But that being said, it's a sales pitch. So this is a sales pitch,
of course,
and there's nothing wrong. I mean, I really actually hear, other than some of the, and I've heard these types of claims about so many things over the time that they just kind of wash over me. I don't really get that same sort of indignant feeling about it. I'm like, oh yes, right, you've got.
I guess I've seen so many of them. I just can't ignore them now. I mean, the claims got a little bit more and more ridiculous as the video went on. By the end, they're saying, oh, it's scary listening to Elvis because he's dead, but it sounds like he's alive in your room. And I'm like, well, there's a heck of a lot of variables going on into that, but okay.
Yeah, let's just say, hey, Bub, if any speaker that's doing its job, it should sound like Elvis is in your room.
Sure, yeah. And
you did not invent, imaging.
By the end of it sounded as though the only artists you should listen to are ones who are already passed away, so that was odd. But yeah, no, it got. I mean, it's.
I suppose.
I don't know. I just ignore this stuff. I find it fluff. It's just fluff. It's marketing fluff. So.
I mean, they may have a fantastic sounding speaker. I will never know because no one will ever play for me a $300,000 speaker, because I will never be in a house that has $300,000 speakers, because I don't think I've probably been in $1 million house before, I think, but probably not, to be honest with you. So it's fine. They are selling this product, and that's all that they're doing. And yes, they have to tell you that everything is, special, or you're not going to spend $300,000 on it. So
right. Well, certainly don't worry about it that your speakers are not like this. That's don't worry
fine.
About that.
That's right. And if you're buying a guitar, I guess Martin, they're the best. So
guess so.
Lastly, Chris made a backup of a 3D Blu-ray using Make MKV, but he wants to play it in 2D. Will it have the same audio? Will it play in 2D just fine, or is the 3D backup significantly different from backing up the actual 2D disc in any way? I don't know, but I have a feeling I don't think the audio should be okay.
Well, it'll have whatever. Yeah, it'll have whatever audio is on the disc, and they aren't always identical. For example, the 3D disc of Gravity, which you would want everything, but no, the 3D disc only has 5.1. The 2D disc has the Atmos track. Can't have them both on the same disc. Really stupid. Yeah, but so it depends on what's on the disc. Whatever's on the disc is what'll end up in your backup. And then, so what you'll end up with is an MVC file instead of an AVC file. And pretty much all of the players that'll play back MVCs will play it back in 2D just fine. I haven't really come across many that don't. I'm not exactly sure what it's doing, whether it's just taking one eye or the other. I think that's what it's doing, is just taking one eye, but it's always played back just fine anytime I've tried to play one back in 2D. So should be all right. Yeah.
All right, that was the last one of him, right? We're done with him.
Yeah.
I accidentally scroll past him. Jonathan says Audioholics posted a preview of the new REL-T/I series subwoofers. It reads like a press release, and Jonathan was puzzled by a couple of the statements in particular. First statement, unlike most other subwoofer manufacturers, REL strongly encourages the use of high-level connection over the use of the LFE input alone for a more seamless blend with the main speakers. Wouldn't that require running speakers as large, and what is our opinion on that? First of all, preview articles on Audioholics as somebody who wrote for Audioholics for 8 freaking years. I can tell you, a preview article is a press release that has been de-press released by the writer. So the writer takes the press release and then goes through it, maybe posts. I mean, it depends on who it is. I would take the press release, read through the press release, look at the product, and then write an original article based on it. Other press release, other previews can be a little bit of opinion at the beginning, a little bit of opinion at the end, and press release in between that. It's been almost completely unaltered, right, except to take out, which we always did. We always took out because press releases are often start with REL, the world leader in subwoofer manufacturing, right, whatever. Take that line out. Then we take out any quotes of people within the company, because there's always like there's always a paragraph, and then there's a quote, and then there's crap about the thing, and then another quote, and then a closing paragraph, and then pricing usually, or pictures. So we would take out the quotes, we would take out that first line, and then maybe add some opinion at the front, at the end, or both, or neither. So that's what a preview article is everywhere, but definitely at Audioholics is how it works. So when they make these statements, it's probably REL making these statements, and that's why they are saying REL strongly encourages, or REL says
that's
this.
Right.
They are not saying, the author is not saying that Audioholics endorses that, but that's what REL is saying. So what is our opinion of using high level connection over the LFE input alone? It's stupid. I don't think there's any reason for it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's any reason for it. It's assuming that you don't have an adequate crossover in your receiver, I guess.
Yeah, no, REL is still living in the days when they focus on 2-channel only a lot.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, stereo receivers don't have crossovers. They don't have subwoofer outputs. So this is the way you have to do it anyway. And then they're like, oh, we don't necessarily trust the Dolby Digital decoder to get it right, because they're still talking about Dolby Digital 5.1 and a lot of their stuff. Like, they're really stuck in the past on a ton of this stuff, and they don't.
Welcome to 1995.
You're an audiophile. You would never use a home theater receiver to listen to 2-channel music. I mean, how could you? It's not specialized for that. It's nonsense.
Yeah. So think of this in one of two ways. One, either they're stuck in the past, what Rob is suggesting, or what I'm going to suggest is that they're trying to differentiate themselves, just like our $300,000 speaker manufacturer. The last one, they're trying to point out why they're special. Why are they special? Because they care so much about the quality that they want you to use a different connection. Is it going to make any sonic difference? No.
They're often trying to sell to the crowd who doesn't want subwoofers at all. That is one of REL's specialties, is marketing to 2-channel only people who think subwoofers are evil. And they're like, no. Look, no subwoofer output. We just add this to your 2-channel system. It just enhances your already fabulous full-range speakers. So that's part of it.
So this is another quote. Another rare aspect of the design is the implementation of a high-level Nutric speakon input. Speak-on terminated cables are greatly preferred for their reliability and security over standard banana plugs or bare wire. Followed by later, this is another quote, if you got a space and you really want to locate one of these subs but don't have a pre-wire run for it, don't sweat it. You can add their compact Aero wireless kit to any REL TI subwoofer for free from the confines of a cable, to be free from the confines of a cable at no penalty in audio performance. So which is it? Are speak-on connectors better, or they are confined? And if the wireless connection offers no penalty in audio performance, are they saying it's better than bare wire? So supposedly these connections, the speak-on connections, is better than bare, whatever. Yeah, they're just trying to sell you the wireless kit to begin with there. But again,
$200 for a wireless subwoofer kit.
$200 for a wireless subwoofer kit. And again, I really feel like this is just another way of them saying, oh, well, you know, other manufacturers will tell you to use banana plugs, but those aren't good enough for us. We got to have these special ones, which, by the way, we sell, and they cost a lot more. It's nothing.
I mean, speak-on terminals you'll very often find on like professional monitors, like professional.
What do they look like? I don't know what these things look like.
They're like I mean, they're very similar to an XLR connection, but they've got like that round inner piece of plastic. So it's a
yeah,
round connection with like the little round inner thing there, and it's just a speaker wire connection. But yeah, you'll very often see them on like PA speakers and that.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's no better than bare wire. It's not better. It's a different type of connector.
None of this is. I mean, if the electrical connection is going through and there's not like added impedance or resistance or something like that, which there shouldn't be with almost every one of these things, it's convenience.
Yeah.
All
no,
we're
I mean,
talking about
speak-on
here
connectors are nice in that they kind of click in. They kind of lock. So that's
nice.
A nicety.
Banana
but you
plugs
could
work
use a
too.
locking banana plug. Yeah, that'll work just as well. No, so yeah, it's marketing fluff. It's definitely press release stuff. It's not Autoholics saying it. They're quoting what REL is sending them. So
Yeah. This comes from Nick in Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne. Nick made a few upgrades to his theater. He purchased an X3300W, added a pair of Atmos speakers, and rebuilt his Dynaudio speakers himself to get them new enclosures. Well, he's a handy man, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Now he wants to focus on his subwoofers. His room is small, roughly 1180 cubic feet, and is enclosed rectangle with a sliding door. He has one Sunfire True, so the dual 10-inch drivers with 2700 watts peak, an 11-inch sealed cube, response time to 22 hertz. And he's happy with it, so we'd like to continue using it. Okay, first of all, remember what we said before about subwoofers being small? And if you want them to be small, they got to deal with that, that air inside, so they need a big amp. 2700 watts.
That's right.
That's a lot of watts for an amplifier, for a little subwoofer. But the Sunfire doesn't sell that model anymore. If you were to get another Sunfire sub, you'd only be considering their least expensive Dynamic series due to budget. The largest Dynamic series model, the 12-inch, only claims response down to 28 hertz. So should he consider an SVS sub instead? And if so, should he get an SB1000, 2000, or maybe a ported model? I think he wants probably sealed, I would guess.
Yeah.
He would want to stick with sealed.
Oh, yeah.
1180 down to 22 hertz. SB. I mean, you could I think you can get away with the SB 1000, but I have a feeling this man's going to want to go for the SB 2000.
I mean, what I would do is check with the SVS dealers in Australia and see if any of them still have an SB12 NSD. The model that the 2000 replaced.
You disappeared for a bit, so you're going to I've missed everything you said, so just go on.
Okay, so yeah, because the SB12 NSD, which is replaced by the SB2000 in the lineup, that's almost like the perfect choice. It's got like almost the exact same extension as your current sub. It should be a little bit cheaper because the SB2000 has replaced it now, so the SB12 NSDs were on clearance. But it's a little bit more output than the SB1000 would give you. So I think
he probably. I didn't hear what you said, but I initially said that I thought he could get away with a 1000. Did you agree with that? Yeah.
It's a little bit iffy. I kind of would hem and haw about it. I mean, I would agree if you just gave me this room size, it'd be like an SB1000 to be fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite extend down to 20 hertz. That's like the only model SVS makes that doesn't quite extend down to 20 hertz.
This one doesn't. The Sunfire doesn't either.
This one doesn't either. Yeah. I mean, the SB1000 would probably be quite close. In this room size, it would probably be fine.
I do think that he's going to end up with a 2000 no matter what we say.
So the 2000, no worries about the 2000. If you get the 2000, no worries. But I would definitely check around and see if anybody has an SB12 NSD for a lower price, because that'd be ideal.
So his current sub is in the rear left corner beside his back row of seats that are right up against the back wall. He's thinking he'll put the second sub in the front right corner. Any comment on that plan? Rear left corner, front right corner? Yep.
In an enclosed rectangle, sounds perfect.
Perfect.
That's our
Enjoy.
Comment. Yes.
Heath's theater build began almost 2 years ago with a completely unfinished basement and writing us to figure out which section ought to be made into a dedicated rectangular theater room. We dealt with the water softener tank and piping for a sprinkler system with a suggestion for a false wall. This is the guy who flooded, right? He flooded?
No, that was somebody else, but...
no, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, this was...
if you're watching the YouTube video, there's going to be all sorts of pictures, so you're going to want to pick that up.
Along.
Along the way, we discussed pretty much every aspect of Heath's build: seating and placement, speaker choices, subwoofer choices, screen and projector choices, wiring, finishing, all of it. His theater is nearly complete now. He wound up with Aperion Veris series speakers. Finally! I finally get one win in the column. Everybody's buying your stupid speaker. No one buys my speakers. I assume that you demoed them and you loved them, and good on you. I have no horse in this race other than just because Rob always wins. He's got dual SVS SB 4000 subs, a Marantz SR 7010, and 2 rows of recliners that he wanted, neutral gray and back for the room, neutral gray and black for the room. And now that he's ordered his clearance JVC RS 520 projector and 92-inch acoustically transparent Seymour screen, he's just waiting on those to arrive before he mounts the screen on his false wall, fills in the rest of the false wall with black panels, and gets the projector fired up. And then you're seeing these pictures. This place looks awesome.
So, I mean, before and after, this is like a complete transformation of completely bare basement, everything open. So now he doesn't have the screen in yet, but that's kind of cool because we can still see where the water softener and that is. And then, yeah, the rest of the room is looking pretty darn spiffy.
Do we know what... I know he gave us a budget at one point to this thing. I wonder how much he actually spent.
Yeah.
I would like to know that, because some people would like to know that answer to that question.
Absolutely.
You could go from this to this, and this is how much he spent doing it. Now, does that mean you're going to spend that much? I don't know. I don't know how much he did it himself, but this thing looks awesome.
Yes.
So, just a comment first that we talked about making sure he could protect his projector by plugging it into an APC for battery backup. The in-wall kits from brands like Sandisk seem kind of expensive, and his electrician said that it was against code to just run Romex between the projector and the UPS directly. So he found an inexpensive male electrical plug on Amazon that fits into a normal single gang electrical box, so that got installed behind his APC, sorry. And a regular extension cord goes from the APC to that male inlet, then Romex goes from the male inlet to a regular female inlet in his outlet on the ceiling, and his projector can plug into that ceiling outlet directly, much less expensive than the electrical in-wall kits. It is an electrical in-wall kit. You just made it.
Yeah, you put it together yourself one piece at a time. That's right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did, and I'm sure at some point that's exactly what I told you to do. I did the same thing with my parents. My parents were like, I tried to explain to them what it was, and they just got this glassy look over their eyes, and they ended up buying a kit, which was like $100 or something like that, $110. It was
his was like $30 all in. So
yeah, and that's what the thing is. The problem is finding that male outlet, inlet, or whatever you would call that thing, so that you could run it. But everything else is fine. And your electrician was absolutely right. This is against code to just run Romex directly to it. So
you don't just have Romex poking out of your wall through a hole. That's not how that's
they
done.
frown on that. So anyways, he'll have his JVC RS 520 projector mounted to his ceiling with his chief projector ceiling mount. That offers a lot of adjustments for pitch, roll, yaw, blah, blah, blah. JVC also offers both horizontal and vertical lens shift. So what's the best way to get the image perfectly aligned on the screen? Should you try not to touch the lens shift and just adjust the chief mount as much as possible? Would that result in keystoning? No, the lens shift is perfectly fine, dude. That doesn't adjust. I mean, basically, in this room, all you want your projector to be is facing dead forward. I'm sure he's got it mounted smack dab in the middle of the room. Why wouldn't he? I mean, it's his dedicated home theater. So face forward and level, and then anything else you need to adjust, you adjust that with the lens shift. The lens shift does not add to keystoning or your ability. You're not
the chief mount could, right?
Right, if you angle it wrong, right?
Yeah. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to use both, because you're going to mount it up there, and then you're going to turn the projector on, and pretty much all projectors have an internal grid pattern that you can throw up. So you project the internal grid pattern, and it's not going to be aligned on your screen at this point.
No.
But leave it where it is. And at this moment, you use just the adjustments of your chief projector mount to perfectly square up the image. You want all of the lines to be perfectly level, the horizontal lines perfectly level, the vertical lines perfectly vertical, everything perfect and square. And then you use the horizontal and vertical lens shift to get it to align with the borders of your screen. That's what the two different functions are. So you don't want to, so let's say when you first mount the projector and you turn it on, the image is projecting too high, right? Part of the bottom of your screen is blank, and part of the image of the projected image is above the top of your screen. You don't want to just tilt it down with the chief mount. That will create keystoning. So you're just using the chief mount to get a perfectly square and leveled image, and then you use the lens shift to align it to your screen.
Right. Lastly, he says he does have plans to add acoustic treatments, but he's out of money at the moment, and it's already sounding pretty good to him. The front left speaker is somewhat compromised by having to be positioned between his water tank softener and his sprinkler tank, but that is what it is. So, are there any final suggestions we have for his room? He's already resolved not to look at any more equipment reviews for the next year. That's a good idea, dude. Let me look back at this thing specifically at the front of the room here, because I thought when I saw these pictures earlier that I didn't really see a problem with this placement. You could cheat that speaker just a little bit more forward, maybe just get it to as forward as you can. But it's going to be right up on that speaker grill.
Yeah, I think the base of the speaker stand that he's using is kind of already up against the
I can see that
of his false wall.
I'm just wondering how far, it just get as far forward as you can. Everything looks fantastic. I don't really
it really
see a problem
does.
here. I don't really see a problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he went for with control. It looks like he's got a little thing where he can mount an iPad into one of his cup holders, so he's probably using something along those lines. But no, I mean, everything in here looks pretty darn fantastic. I like the cross diagonal corner placement for the two subwoofers, so that's very nice. Everything's nicely tucked in a Sanus stand that has casters that he can pull out. So the only thing in his email, he mentioned that he had already run Odyssey as things are right now, because he was doing his setup. Be sure that once you have the setup completely finalized, you do that again, because there will be some minor little changes that happen with having put in your screen and that. And when you do add your acoustic treatments that you've already planned on, you'll want to run Odyssey yet again, because that will once again change the acoustics. But otherwise, things are looking spiffy.
Adriano. Yet another friend of Adriano's in Australia is looking for some suggestions. You should suggest they start listening to this podcast, and then they don't have to bug you. His friend is putting together his first dedicated theater. Adriano has already tried to discuss some of the, shall we say, compromises that are being implemented, but his friend seems set on the decisions that have been made. So these are the decisions. The room is a 21-foot square. So there's no changing of the dimensions, and it has a slightly lowered 7-foot 2-inch ceiling. The sofa will be 7 feet from the back wall, 14 feet from the front wall. The speaker configuration will be 7.1.2, and yes, Adriano has already tried to get him to consider 7.2.4 or 5.2.4, but that's no go. Furthermore, the surround, back, surround, and top middle speakers are all going to be in-ceiling speakers, and those are already pre-wired. Nothing in my brain can imagine what top, middle, and surround in-ceiling speakers look like.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit weird.
They're right on top of each other, like within inches of each other. Like the surrounds might be slightly further back or something.
Yes. And maybe slightly farther apart.
Wider, I guess. Yeah. I mean, they seem like they'd be right next to each other. So I've been trying to wrap my brain around that part of this whole thing. But
I mean, if it were top front and top rears and then in-ceiling surrounds and in-ceiling surround backs, I might say some things are probably going to sound redundant, but it would function. But yeah, surrounds and top middles, they're going to be close to each other.
They're going to be awfully close to each other. It makes zero sense in my mind.
We're not here to debate that. So
I'm just pointing at. I'm just reinforcing what Chris is probably thinking and said multiple times to his friend. But what ifs? Whatever, him too. Furthermore, okay, we already said that. With all that said, the request is for 9 speakers, 6 of them being in ceiling, and 1 subwoofer for $3,500 to $4,000 Australian. Despite not going with any of Adriano's other advice, for some reason, this friend is fine with going with whatever speakers we recommend. They got to be in wall. So 6 of them are being in ceiling, and so that just the front 3.
The front 3 are regular, and then a subwoofer, and only 1. 21 by 21 by 7.
I think you can get SVS in Australia.
You can get SVS, yeah. And a 2000 series would be fine for this room size. About 3,000 cubic feet. But they're like, so in Australian dollars, it's like twice the numerical number of the US price. So you're looking at around $1,500 for a 2000 series, a ported one.
Right. That leaves you like $2,000 to $2,500 left for the rest of the speakers.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what speakers there are there. I mean, I know what I saw when I was there, but he's already dead set on in-ceiling speakers. So
yeah,
that's really where I.
But it's a little bit lowered ceiling, so you could maybe get away with 5.25-inch ones instead of 6 to save some money. Instead of 6.5-inch drivers, you go with 5.25-inch drivers, because that'd be fine with the lowered ceiling. I mean,
I don't know what manufacturers are available over there, other than like Dolly, I know is there. And,
well, the 2 ones that I found at a few Australian websites that I perused that I would wholeheartedly endorse would be CAF and Yamo.
I forgot about Yamo. Yeah.
Yeah, Kef and Yamo would both be really good choices. They're definitely available in Australia. I found them at several Australian different websites. Now the Kefs, again, the prices are like twice what they are in the US. So it
Right.
might be difficult if you're going for the newest Kef Q series because like the big center that they sell alone is like $1,000 Australian. So that's eating up too much of your budget. But if they still have some stock of the older Q series,
Right.
which a lot of stores still do. That would probably work, and they definitely make some nice 5.25-inch diameter in ceiling speakers that would work just fine. You'd go for the CS series if you're going with Kef, and then Yamo did have some offerings that are a little bit less expensive. So I'd look at those two. That's my suggestion.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, let's be honest, dude. This guy, your friend here, and I believe me, when we talk about stuff like this where we disagree or we don't agree with what people have done or whatever, we've all been in this situation. And the reality is he's going to, or she, I don't really know, is going to enjoy their setup
Mm-hmm.
regardless. This is going to be something better than anything they've heard in their house before.
Mm-hmm.
And even though those speakers are going to be redundant, they're still going to be or co-located. They're still going to be different than anything they've experienced. So they're going to be really pleased with it. So don't sweat it too much. Which speaker choices that they get, because I gotta believe they're going from TV speakers or something, anything is going to be an upgrade. So just find something that works within the budget that won't be too crazy cheap as far as quality wise and sound quality wise. And I think you're gonna be okay. Kef, Yamo. I'm trying to think of other manufacturers that are out there that I remember. But Dolly, of course, but I think Dolly probably end up being way too expensive.
Yeah.
And
the SVS speakers are way overpriced. Like the Prime Center is $1,000 Australian, which is insane. Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
Brock prices.
Brock just bought an Oppo UDP-203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player a couple of weeks ago. Then, of course, last week they announced that they're going out of business. They're not actually going out of business. They're just not going to sell stuff here anymore.
Yeah.
He knows that they've said they'll continue to provide support and firmware updates, but do we think he should maybe return it? It's great so far, but he's worried about the long term. This is a very hard question for us to answer because we have no idea. I'll tell you what I would do. What I would do is I would keep it. I would keep it because most of the problems that they've had with that thing, they've already had. Mm-hmm. Meaning, the kind of things that they have to issue firmware updates for, like specific, the early releases of Blu-rays, Ultra HD Blu-rays that were weird and they had to do a specific firmware for that specific movie. A lot of that stuff's been ironed out. And going forward, you're not going to have a lot of those problems. It's a very good player.
Yeah,
it's easily one of the best on the market right now. And I would be any movie that didn't play on this thing or any issue you might have with it, I think it's going to be probably worth it for everything else that it gives you. In my mind, I'm also thinking that most of the other Ultra HD Blu-ray players that I've experienced, or especially the one I'm experiencing right now, doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence that you're going to find a better one out there that's going to give you an experience that's going to be as good. At least up until this point, Oppo has been extremely responsive about their players and supportive of their players. So if it were me, I would keep it. If you said I'm not comfortable with it, I'm sending it back, I would say
I would understand that too. Yeah. No, I wouldn't return it. I'd keep it, and I don't think you'll have much trouble selling it in the future. That there are going to be Oppo fans for a long time to come, and so yeah.
It's a very good point, and something that should be maybe mentioned as well is that you may find 20 years from now that Oppo players are going to be worth tens of thousands
collector's
of dollars.
Item,
yeah, for the audiophile crowd who doesn't believe that crystal-based music is as pure as the golden age of music that was Blu-ray or Ultra HD Blu-ray. So I would not be surprised if we'll find somebody putting drilling a little hole in one, adding a tube to it, and having it in an audiophile system 10 years from now. I would not be surprised. Secondly, he says, we discussed his future theater room options where right now he's using an in-law suite, but he has an unfinished basement that is basically split in two sides by the staircase. He decided that he will go for the dedicated theater in his basement. All right, that's good. Yep. One of the things we mentioned might be a good idea in this basement would be a drop tile ceiling. We said that he'd want to use proper acoustic ceiling tiles, not just the thin, cheap, normal ceiling tiles. But when he started to do some research, he found that there are a ton of ceiling tiles that claim to be acoustic. Mm-hmm. That's in air quotes for those of you that aren't watching the video. And many of them give NRC ratings, but they all seem to just be fiberglass. So will those really block any sound from getting upstairs? Is there a particular brand or type of tile that we can point to as an example? I'm sure Rob has an example.
Yes. So first of all, the NRC ratings are talking about that's the same thing that you would find on an absorption panel.
Yeah.
So that is not soundproofing. That is not sound blocking. That is absorption of reflections.
So you put a sound on one side, and then you put the panel, the acoustic tile there, or the panel, whatever the case may be, and you put a microphone on the other side. You play it at a certain volume, and on the other side you record it, and you're like, okay, what was the volume difference? And that tells you that's what that.
Well, not quite. That would be the STC rating, which is the thing you're actually looking for. Yeah, so the STC rating is the sound transmission coefficient. That's what you're actually looking for, and most tiles don't have one because they're not soundproofing tiles. Right. So that's one clue. If you find tiles that have an STC rating, that's what you're looking for when it comes to soundproofing. And what you're looking for is a tile that has a solid backing of some kind. Usually vinyl. Sometimes it's metal that they have on there, but it's a solid backing that you're looking for. There's a company called Acoustical Solutions. You can look at their barrier acoustic tiles. You don't have to get theirs, but that's an example of the type of thing you're looking for, and those have an STC rating to tell you how much sound they actually block from
26.
Getting upset.
They block 26 dB, I guess is what 26 is, right? dB.
STC doesn't exactly translate to dB because it's different at different frequencies, but it's
there you go. Josh would like our comments on ratings.
They say ratings. They just left out the A for
ratings. Long-term OLED burn-in test. They are running 6 LG C7 OLED TVs for 20 hours per day, 5 hours on, 1 hour off, all controlled automatically. 5 of the TVs are set to 200 nits for SDR, 100% white, and 1 is set to 400 nits, a maximum OLED light setting. 2 of the TVs, one of them being maxed out, the maxed out set, are showing nothing but CNN. 1 is showing nothing but pre-recorded football games, and 1 is just turned to NBC all the time. The 2 are showing video games, 1 with a static HUD or HUD, and 1 without. That's right. So if they should face all these TVs at each other.
Nope, they're all on a wall.
It would be fantastic if they were all facing each other. So the CNN ones and the NBC ones and the Call of Duty ones were all fighting. All right, they're taking photos of test patterns in full screen colors every 2 weeks. So far, the worst image retention has been the 200 nit CNN TV, not the maxed out CNN TV. Ratings themselves are saying that the results are not intuitive and not what was expected, but what do we have to say about it? I don't know, dude. That's why the 200 nits versus the 400 nits. I have a feeling it has something to do with all the 400 nits, everything getting washed out evenly. So you're rather than 200 nits where some things are actually able to have some variance, and therefore you're seeing it. But that would be my guess.
On that front, I think it's the automatic brightness limiter.
Yeah, it could be. Because you're right too. That's right. The 400 nits, the automatic brightness, after you leave it on for what, like a minute or two or something like that, it cuts it.
Yeah, it's like a couple minutes. Yeah, after it's been bright like that for a couple minutes, it reduces the light output down to 130 nits. So maxing out the light output can actually result in a dimmer image than setting the OLED light setting lower. I mean, being that it's CNN, it's unlikely they're showing you like a full white a lot of the time, but you're still going to activate the automatic brightness limiter. So that is why I suspect the one with the maxed out OLED light setting is probably actually dimmer a lot of the time. So I have a big problem with this test, which is that they don't have a control They don't
All right,
have a single properly calibrated display.
That is true.
Right? 5 of them are 200 nits, which is twice as bright as it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be 100 nits, right? Aren't you
It's
supposed
supposed to
to
be
set it for
100
like 100?
nits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should have one that's that one's one, the control one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's calibrated properly, doing everything it's supposed to do properly. They should have one for each one of the video settings. Really,
they actually should. Yes.
Yeah,
Although
they
that's
should
a
have
lot
one.
of TVs to buy.
Hey, they can't afford an A. I'm surprised they can afford any of these TVs.
But I have a big problem with not having one properly calibrated display in this. Now they're saying their 200 nit CNN one they're treating as their control. I'm like, how is that a control? That is completely a test criteria. You've miscalibrated it and used it in a way that how many people are going to leave it on for 5 hours on CNN, turn it off for an hour, and then turn it back onto CNN for another 5 hours every single day, 20 hours a day? And by the way, the pixel refresher that can run automatically takes slightly more than 1 hour to run, which means they're interrupting the pixel refresher on purpose. Now, they said they're running the pixel refresher manually before they run their test patterns and take their photos. But I'm like, but this thing is supposed to run like every couple hundred hours,
Right.
like automatically. And you're doing it every 2 weeks, 20 hours a day. So they're not really allowing the TV to even function the way it's designed to. And it's miscalibrated. Now, I will say the flip side of this is if you just go into the picture modes, right, the different picture modes, and you choose any of the default ones that are not the ISF dark room mode, almost all of them have the OLED light setting set at 50 or 60. Some are 70 or 80. The Vivid, of course, is all the way up at 100. Now, how can I blame a user for going in and choosing the standard picture mode or the sports picture mode? Like, it's right there.
Right.
I really can't blame someone who goes in, buys an OLED and chooses that picture mode. It's there for them to choose. So it's fair enough to say we're going to set the OLED light setting and the contrast and brightness and whatever at a level that is above what a properly calibrated TV should be because the default picture modes are there. That's a fair test criteria. But there really should be one that's properly calibrated to 100 nits. So it still doesn't tell us if a properly calibrated OLED is going to get any image retention.
Right.
Why is the 200 nit CNN burning in? Well, because you've got the CNN logo that never goes away, and the 200 nit setting is not activating it is activating the automatic brightness limiter, but not as much as the 400 nit one.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just that CNN logo either. It's that entire background.
The ticker
with
at the bottom. That's
the
right.
ticker at the bottom. That's the thing that's going to get you. And then there's a lot of other stuff that is on the screen a whole bunch when you're seeing, the talking heads and stuff like that that are there. So yeah.
But look, if this is the way you use your TV, get an LCD instead. Yeah, that's what you do. But I mean, all the other TVs, I mean, even the ones that's showing like the nothing but football game with a heads up display, they're like, yeah, there's a teeny tiny little bit of image retention, but it pretty much goes away after we run their pixel refresher. So I'm like, okay.
So even when we abuse these, for the most part, they're okay? Good.
For the most part.
Wow. That's how I interpret this.
You can burn it in. Yeah, just like you could with a plasma. It was possible. I'm not going to say it's not possible. Absolutely. It is
I just
possible.
love it when they do tests like this. It's like taking a drive, going for a car test and you driving it directly into a wall and say, see, it can crash. Yeah, it can crash. If you crash it.
The people on YouTube are freaking out. OLED is the devil now. So good on you. Thanks.
Thanks, YouTube. This is why we can't have nice things. Ted.
We missed his second question, Josh's.
Oh, did we?
Yep.
Josh is still rocking I scrolled after a while. Still rocking a Panasonic plasma, not a hint of burn-in on it, by the way. And it's probably because you don't set it to 200 nits and then watch CNN for 5 hours and then turn it off for an hour and put it back on for CNN 5 hours. I want to say when you said who would do it like that, I was thinking, my in-laws used to watch like CNN.
Okay.
Well,
then they should get an LCD. There you go.
They had a plasma, and guess what? That plasma is currently at my brother-in-law's place, and it doesn't have burn-in because I set it. I set it, did the settings on it, and I made sure they didn't have it on vivid mode.
Yes.
Josh is still rocking a Panasonic plasma, and a hint of burn-in. He loves its deep black level, so OLED is definitely on his radar. But if he were to consider a new TV, he'd want it to be larger than 70 inches. So, what are the chances of a reasonably priced larger than 70-inch OLED? What's reasonable to you?
Right.
let's start with that. Do you have $20,000 lying around? Because you could probably get one right now or very soon.
Well,
But
that was just it. So you had the G6 77-incher. That was $20,000.
Yeah.
Then the following year, you had the G7 and the W7 77-inchers, and those were $15,000. So it came down.
Getting there, dude.
And then now this year, we have the 77-inch C8, and it's available for $9,000. So the price is definitely coming down, and 77 inches seems to be the size that they have. That's above 70. $9,000 still a heck of a lot of money, but way better than $20,000 2 years ago. So I don't know how much more it's going to come down. They're constructing that gigantic manufacturing plant for more OLED big panels. So
I
mean,
if it got down to $5,000, I would jump on it. You know, that might be 2 years away, but if it got down that low, I would probably jump on it. But
it's moving in the right direction, at least.
In the right direction, yes, exactly. On to Ted. Ted says, we've talked about reference volume, and Odyssey has a reference curve for the frequency response. And if you go to Klipsch, they have reference everything. But is there such a thing as a reference waterfall graph? Would that potentially be more useful than a reference frequency response curve? Frequency response curve, you can look at it and understand what you're looking at. A waterfall plot is like nearly impossible for the layperson and some professionals or quasi-professionals, if that's what you consider me to be, to look at it and just go, oh yeah, that looks like a pretty good one. No, I mean, should there be one? Is there one? I don't know if there is, but if there is, it certainly isn't something that I think is going to be helpful for most people.
So, I mean, a waterfall graph includes the frequency response.
It does.
The uppermost part. So I'm showing an image of an example of a waterfall graph, but to describe it for people who are only listening to the audio, it kind of looks like mountains. All right. And so the very top, the tops of the mountains is your frequency response. And then it looks as though the graph is coming like towards you out of the screen in a 3D fashion. And that's showing the decay times. So if you look at each frequency from low to high, low on the left, high on the right, you can see the frequency response at the top, and then you can see the decay times of each of those frequencies as the sort of mountains coming towards you look. So what would a reference waterfall graph look like? Well, we've described it a few times, which is that what you want to see are relatively short decay times. You don't want any super long decay times. You don't want the mountains to really come very far toward you. And we would expect in any room that the lower frequencies will naturally have slightly longer decay times than the higher frequencies, just because it takes that much more time for them to form in the first place and then dissipate. So a reference waterfall graph would have a gradual so the mountains would gradually come closer toward you as you go lower in frequency. And the top of it should be pretty close to a flat line or maybe a slightly rising line toward the low frequencies. So in both cases, your reference frequency response is a gradual, smooth, maybe slight rise towards the base, and so would the decay times. They would be a slight increase in decay times.
So it looked like a wedge if it was
kind of a wedge.
A wedge. So for those of you that Rob described it pretty well, but I just want to, sometimes it helps to hear it twice. Mm-hmm. If you took a normal frequency response graph, which is a line, right? You took that line, and then when you hit the note, right, as over time, and time would be coming towards you on the z-axis, right? As time goes on, the volume that note for each frequency, the volume is being plotted across time, so it's getting lower and lower as it comes towards you. That's the mountain he's talking about. He's talking about the contour of that. And that's essentially what's happening. They're just plotting the volume difference, as over time, and that should be a fairly steep mountain at the front, and at the top and the higher frequencies and lower frequencies, it's going to be a little bit not as steep. I don't know. If you can't picture that, then go to youtube.com/AVRant and check out the video. The show notes will have the question time stamp. Apparently, it's a thing we're doing now.
Oh, yeah.
Bob has a set of Snell speakers that are probably about 20 years old now. He's used these speakers in 3 different rooms, and he's always had some dialogue intelligibility issues, so it might have been that the room or his positioning every time, but he thinks there's a pretty good chance that the speakers themselves could simply be better. He knows our advice would be to listen to as many different speakers as possible, even models that are way out of his budget, but he simply doesn't have the time or the inclination to go through all of that. So he wants to put us on the spot with a $1,500 budget for 3 speakers up front LCR. What's our number one go-to pick? He always sits a normal 12 to 15 feet away, so no long list of options. What's the number one choice?
Mine might surprise you.
I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I think it's probably not your speakers. Without me having any more information than what you just told us here, my guess is that you're having some, because Snell speakers in general, now they're 20 years old, so I don't know which ones you have or anything like that, or who made them or anything like that. But they were never a budget option.
No,
they're
good speakers.
So, I would believe that the speakers themselves would probably be okay. I would bet the room is doing something. Maybe you're sitting against a wall, or you've always sat against a wall.
Have you always sat with your seat up against the back wall? Maybe. A lot of people do.
My guess would be maybe that, or the speaker placement as far as where you're putting the.
Yeah, have you maybe always recessed your center speaker and pushed it back on its TV
that
stand
being
or
said,
something?
Let's hear what Rob has to say, because I'm very curious what you have to say.
No, if I had to do one pick that I think will work for a lot of people and sound really good for a $1,500 budget for front, left, center, right, I would get the AVRant speakers from AVRant.
Look at you go, stealing my choice.
I would,
I thought about that.
Yeah, the AVRant center is now, caution, the AVRant center is a big speaker. It's over 2 feet wide.
I would hold it up, but it's heavy and it's behind me.
It's a big speaker, so look at the dimensions, because it might not physically fit where you need to put it. It is a large speaker, but in terms of value for that price point, that will work in almost any situation really well. The AVRant Center with a pair of the AVRant bookshelf speakers from AVRant, that'd be my go-to choice.
See, I would probably go. My first thought is always in the case where somebody wants my go-to. This speaker is going to be the one that's going to be the one that I don't know anything about the room or the person or anything. Mm-hmm. RBH is going to be always my option. So RBH is going to have something that you're going to be able to choose. A couple of bookshelves in the center channel, maybe 3 bookshelf speakers, maybe a tower. It used to be a tower and a nice big center for $1,500. It's not that case anymore. But I would probably choose RBH simply because I know they're so neutral and they're so flat that if you tell me you have RBH speakers and your speakers don't sound right, I know it's your room.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's your placement.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
something. You know what I mean.
That's largely the case for the AVRant too, though. I mean,
it is. The AVRants are a very good choice too. I thought about that too. I thought about saying AVRants, but
no, because I can't think of too many people who are going to object to the looks, other than maybe the size of the center. Yeah. And then, they actually have tweeter protection, which not all speakers do. So even if you attempt to overdrive them, they won't kill themselves. And really good sound, good value, excellent value, in fact. So, yeah.
All right, here, we got some time. Infinite Gary. First, just to clarify, Rob said that the surround back speaker should be 30 to 45 degrees to either side, but Dolby's diagram says 135 to 150 degrees. We actually meant the same thing, right? Or was Rob talking about some different angle than Dolby? Rob was talking about if you're facing the back of the room, you should go 30 to 45 degrees off the center line from the back. And if you add 30 to 45 degrees to 135 to 150 degrees, you get 180. So they're talking about from the front of the room. That's the only difference.
Yeah. Their reference point, their 0 degree mark was straight ahead on the front of the wall. I was describing you had turned yourself around 180 degrees and were facing the back wall, and now you're going 30 to 45 degrees to the left and the right of the back wall. Right. So we did mean the same thing.
Yeah. For surround back speakers, there are the angle guidelines for the positioning, but what about the angle for the speakers themselves, i.e. their toe in? Mm-hmm. There don't seem to be any rules or guidelines for that, like there are for the front left and right speakers. By his own experimentation, having them aimed straight at his ears didn't sound as good as having them just aimed straight forward and at the front wall of the room. With them aimed straight forward, he felt there was better sense of the sound being continuous as it traveled from the surround speakers to the surround backs. Any thoughts? My thought is that you position your speakers properly, because most surround speakers are supposed to be on the walls or to your sides, basically firing straight into the room, not firing at you. Surround back speakers should be on the back wall, firing straight forward. and that's what
Pretty
you did,
much.
and that's the situation. Remember, surround speakers are not supposed to. They are supposed to be sort of diffuse sounding.
A little bit diffuse. Yeah, a little bit.
So that means that you want some. If they are off axis to your
Mm-hmm.
ears, that's probably a good thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of. Yeah, there's no real hard and fast rule. There's no real hard and fast rule for front, left, and right either, other than
no,
you kind of need to experiment with it until you get the proper phantom center imaging.
that's right.
So, I mean, by and large, it's the same idea. You're going to have some kind of cone of dispersion from any speaker, and you sort of want all your seats to be within that cone of dispersion if you can. That's usually a good idea, but it's kind of just trial and error. It's kind of experimentation. You did that, and you discovered, hey, aiming them straight forward, that's where it sounds like a continuous sound going around me. That's perfect. That's what you do.
So he says Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays can provide lossless audios, and they'll often have quite a large dynamic range. But he's noticed that very often, if a famous song is used as part of the soundtrack, that song sounds dynamically compressed. It's obviously not some limitation of the disc format itself. So why is this the case? Do creators not care that so many of these songs sound awful and flat? So many of these creators don't have access to the original masters, nor would any studio ever give them access to the original masters. So they said, we want to use your song. They're like, hear this, or they go buy a CD because we need the money. So yeah, that they just don't have access to being able to remaster a song for their movie. It's not generally something that happens.
I mean, I've definitely noticed a lot of times when the, so not the score, but an actual song,
Yeah.
a pre-recorded song kicks in. Yeah, very often it is like way louder. I'm not exactly sure why they've chosen that's the way you always mix pre-recorded music into movies, but it is very common. I've experienced the same thing, and yeah, a lot of them are dynamically compressed, just like a ton of CDs are dynamically compressed horribly. So it's unfortunate. I agree with you. It's not the way I would like it to be, but
yeah. Have you seen Baby Driver yet?
I haven't watched it yet. I have it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Oh man, I mean, it's such a good use of music in that movie. It's so much fun, that part of it. Now, I mean, I watched the movie. I remember not hating it, which sometimes leads to movies they're my favorite movies of all time. Like when I first watched The Fifth Element, I walked out and went, I think I kind of like that. That was sort of weird.
I had a fun time with that one.
It's after I saw it again the second time is when it solidified as my favorite movie. I need to watch Baby Driver again because I quite liked it, though Kevin Spacey is in it, and that's just going to kill it for me, I'm sure. But whatever. So we know, once again, we're going on to Infinite Gary. We know that just about any RCA cable would probably be just fine for a 3-foot run, but then we also said we probably wouldn't want to use the super duper cheap red, white, yellow cable that was packed in with the VCR or something. If there were to be an audible difference, what would it be? Interference. You would hear something like crackling or something like that.
It's the number one culprit. That's when you basically have no shielding. The other thing it could be, so that about the only thing that a wire will normally do to an audio signal is attenuate the high frequencies. The highest frequencies will be quieter than they should be, and that can be due to high resistance, high impedance, or high capacitance. They all have the same effect. They affect the high frequencies and make them quieter than they ought to be. So those would be the things that you could potentially hear a difference.
So Jeremy is waiting for true 4K resolution projectors to come down in price. So in the meantime, he bought a used Vizio M65D TV for daytime use and the Epson Pro G5450 1920 by 1200 projector for movies at night. He plans to install a DIY 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio screen, so he's curious about using an anamorphic lens. The projector itself does not have a vertical stretch mode, so he would need both a lens and a video processor, and he wants them both to be inexpensive, and he's fine with used, obviously. So he'll be connecting a Roku, an Xbox One, and an HTPC. What would we recommend? DVDO was like the standalone processor of choice for many, many, many years and many moons ago. And if you can find a used one of their many, many, many things that are out there,
DVDO Edge.
Yeah, the Edge was the last big one that I remember that was sort of almost consumer level. That would be the first name that would come to my mind as far as video processing is concerned.
Yeah, although he's got an M65, which means that, so that's a 4K HDR TV. And then his projector is basically 1080p. I mean, it's 16 by 10, so it's 1920 by 1200. So there's a little bit of an issue here because one display is 4K and HDR and the other one is not.
I mean, if he's willing to go cheap and DIY and everything else, he might be just, hey, unplug the cable to the projector whenever you're using the TV and vice versa, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just the way people have been doing it recently is they've been getting an Oppo, and because the Oppo has an HDMI input and it has a great video scaler with vertical stretch as one of the options. Yeah. So you can put everything into your AV receiver, send your AV receiver's single output into your Oppo player, the Oppo player's input, and then that acts as your video scaler. Now, that's still a $550 player, so it's not exactly cheap.
And they're not going to get any cheaper.
Probably not. Yeah. But that's kind of been the modern way that a lot of people have been doing it. Okay, so what would we recommend? I would recommend not using an anamorphic lens. I mean, really, that is genuinely my 100% recommendation to you. Just zoom the projector in enough that it fills the width of your screen, and then, yes, you will have some of the image being projected above and below the screen.
Right.
I mean, should he even be... I mean, it's a DIY screen. He can make it any aspect ratio he wants. Should he make it 2.39 to 1? I mean, that's going to be okay for CinemaScope movies, but if you're watching any movies that are 1.85 to 1 or 16 by 9 or any thing that isn't CinemaScope...
well, you know my feelings on this subject, which is just have the 16 by 9. I have no idea.
Screen. Live with the black bars.
Live with the black bars. I don't understand why you would do anything else. If you're going to DIY a screen, DIY 2 of them. You know what I mean? Just DIY a second one for the couple of times a year you're watching that 2.35, 3.3, whatever this. I'm tired. Yeah. That would be me. But hey.
No, I mean, really, genuinely, to you, going for an inexpensive anamorphic lens is not a great idea.
Anamorphic lenses aren't inexpensive.
Even a used one, it's...
Yeah.
I mean, he said that he got this TV and this projector together used for like $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, like the cheapest anamorphic lens I've seen out there is like $1,500 to start with. And it has problems, it has chromatic aberrations. It has some geometry issues. I'm like, no, just don't do it.
Just do a 16 by 9 and call it good.
I mean, if you want the CinemaScope screen, I'm fine with that. Just, physically move the projector closer or zoom it in to fill the width of the screen and just have the black bars being projected above and below the physical screen. It really is what I recommend.
Yeah. Jeff. Have time for this?
Oh, yeah. We got lots of time. Got 20 minutes since we started late.
Nope. Jeff. Right now, Jeff has a 1080p plasma and a 1080p Epson 5020 UB projector with a 120-inch screen. He's interested in upgrading to 4K HDR, but he's willing to wait if there are significant improvements expecting within a year or two. Significant improvements to what? For the projector?
Projectors primarily, yeah.
I mean, I would wait. Be honest with you. I think projectors have got a little ways to go before they're going to come down. I mean, his budget's pretty big, so he can afford a decent projector right now. But I would wait. I would wait a year, I think.
Yeah, I'd really like to see what's coming out at the end of this year, because we're going to have announcements from Epson and JVC and Sony at the end of this year. And
I think Cydia is going to be big.
Yeah, I really want to see what they're going to do at the end of this year.
I think you're going to see, and I think we'll have a much better idea of what's going to happen next year at the end of this year. Like, end of this year, I still wasn't. I mean, they were like, "Oh, we've got Wobble K." I'm like, "Okay, what does that mean?" The end of this year, I think we're going to have a better idea of what's going to be coming down the pipe. We'll be able to make a more informed decision. So I would wait, but let's go on. For the projector, his budget is $5,000. He'd be okay with Wobble K, but he wants full 4K 60 hertz support, which knocks the Epson 4050 UB out of contention. He liked better black. 5040, did I say that? Anyways, he'd like better black levels than his 5020. Excuse me. His 5020 UB provides in his completely light controlled room, and he preferred not to see a dynamic iris pumping in the light output levels. Wide color and HDR support are also wanted, although he'd like to know a bit more about which HDR formats are actually important for projectors. So with all of that, what do we think? Is there a great model for him to buy now, or should he wait a year or so? You should wait a year or so, I think.
I do agree. If for nothing else, so to get everything that he described, all right,
which is basically fantastic black levels, HDR, true 4K, though wobble K would be okay, but wobble K, that's good. I mean, that's pricey. I don't even know if you can get that for $5,000. I mean,
sure. Well, so the two choices that would fit your budget would be JVC's X590 and then Sony's, shoot, I'm forgetting the number now, VW, I think it's the 360. It might be a slightly different number that I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, but that is a genuine 4K resolution projector from Sony. That is $5,000. However, both of those have models above them in the respective lineups that have better black levels than those two models. Those are like the entry level from JVC and Sony is $4,000 and $5,000 respectively. They're fantastic, but he's like, I want the plasma blacks. I'm like, well, to get that, you kind of need to go up to the X790 in JVC's lineup, and now you're looking at over $7,000. In Sony's lineup,
in a year that'll be $5,000.
Well, that's just it. So there's two great reasons to wait. One, I'm really anticipating seeing something quite exciting at the end of this year. Might be wrong, but I think there's going to be some cool projectors announced at the end of this year. And second of all, even if there aren't, then this year's models are going to go down in price, and you might be able to get, say, an X790 for about $5,000, because you could get an X770 for about $4,500 at more than a year after that one came out, right? So once the 790 was the current model for a while, the X770 from the year before went down to about $4,500. So there's every reason to expect the X790 will end up down at that price point too in about a year's time. So I would wait. You said you're not in a rush.
So he says he might want to replace his plasma anyway. It's really only for casual viewing, so the plasma kind of overperforms.
We missed a question.
Did I?
Yep.
So I want to be done. If he doesn't upgrade his projector, he'd be. Let's do the other one. I already started this one.
Okay. The one kind of feeds into the other, though.
Yeah, shut up. That's why I was checking. If he does upgrade his projector, he'd be feeding both the new projector and his plasma TV from his Denon X4300H. Is that going to cause lowest common denominator video issues? And the answer is yes.
Unfortunately, probably yes. Yeah, because you probably wouldn't want to connect one of those to the Zone 2 HDMI output, because you still need your audio to be coming from the main zone.
Yeah.
And so once you have two displays connected with Zone 2 on, then it's probably going to go to lowest common denominator if using the HDMI main and sub outputs that are just mirroring the signal. Then it's detecting both displays. I mean, theoretically, when the plasma is turned off, you should be able to pass through 4K and HDR to the projector.
But if there's any sort of low power standby, or hey, let a constant connection going on with HDMI, that handshake is going to screw you up. So
I wish it wasn't so problematic.
I would anticipate, yes, that you're going to have issues.
Yeah, you could install an HD Fury into this signal chain, and that should solve the issue.
Oh yeah, and he might have the money for it anyway. So
yeah,
if he's got $5,000 to spend on a projector, it might be worth it. Yeah. But we're going to fix that right now anyways. He might want to replace his plasma anyway. It's really only for casual viewing, so the plasma kind of overperforms for his needs, and he'd rather just go larger rather than better. So if he gets a new flat panel, it'd need to be bigger than 60 inches, and he'd want 4K and HDR support, so there'd be no issues when feeding the 4K projector and his flat panel, both from the X4300H. $2,000 would be the most he's willing to spend, although he'd rather pay much less if possible, and he doesn't like edge lighting. Any ideas? Does TCL make a 60-incher? I don't think it does.
So TCL's 65-inch 6 series is supposed to be coming out May 1st. That's when they've said that's going to drop. They still haven't announced an official price. I'm not exactly sure why, but they've always been saying it should be under $1,000 for the 65-incher. Now, it's got 120 zones of local dimming. It supports Dolby Vision. It supports HDR10. It supports HLG. So it checks all the boxes for it's going to be around $1,000.
That's half of what you asked for. I mean, it's either that or you get a Vizio, one of the big Vizios on sale. And
Vizio M series would be the alternative for sure.
Yeah, and you could just find one of those on sale. And
Vizio just announced that they're going to be announcing their 2018 lineup quite soon. I think in the middle of this month. It's only about a week away, so we'll see what they're going to do.
We'll see you in a month. Jeremy will be the last question of the night.
Okay.
Jeremy has been listening to AVR or AVR.
Who are we?
We are AVR. I mean, that's what I write.
We are AVR. That's true. Who dat?
Jeremy has listened to AV Rant for many years, and he has pieced together his home theater system little by little. His room is 13 feet front to back, 25 feet side to side, but the home theater area is only taking up the right-hand side of that space. It's open at the back of the kitchen and dining room, so all of the square feet. Many of the square
all the cubic feet.
His gear, he's got a Vizio P65C1 4K HDR. He's sitting 8.5 feet away. 65 inches, 8.5. That seems reasonable. Denon X1000 receiver, Apple TV 4K, PS4 Pro, and Sony X800 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Does your YouTube work? Because if your YouTube works, I'm doing something wrong. Energy Reference Connoisseur Towers, center and bookshelf speakers, BIC F12 sub, GIC panels, 2 behind the seat, one on the right wall, one on the right wall, first reflection point. He wants general feedback. What do we think of his current gear and setup? And if this were our setup, what we want to change? Would we want to move anything, upgrade any of the gear? What would deliver worthwhile improvement? Bigger sub. But that's about the only thing that jumped right out at me with the bigger sub.
That is the number one thing that I thought was a subwoofer upgrade. I must concur. Yes. I think your speakers are very nice.
Yep.
The reference
I'm okay with
connoisseur
the speakers. Yep.
Energy speakers. I wouldn't be in any kind of rush to upgrade those. In this setup, I don't know. Does he need to go more than 5 point? Well, maybe 5.2, maybe 2 subs. But does he need to go more than 5 speakers in here? I mean, you could consider Atmos, I suppose, but
he's kind of sitting on the back wall, anyways, right? So he could put some top middles if you really wanted to. I mean, he's already got lighting on the ceiling, anyways. He could throw a couple of the little bird ones up there. I guess
little birds really wouldn't look out of place on that ceiling. So
you could do that. I mean, you could,
which would then require a receiver upgrade, of course.
Right,
because the X1000 doesn't do that.
Will you experience a huge sonic improvement? I mean, I got to be honest with you. Atmos in here, for me, in my home theater, has been like, yep, it's there. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much been my experience with it. If somebody said to me, I want to transform my home theater to something new, should I get Atmos? I'd be like, that's probably not going to do it, Haas. But you put a bigger subwoofer in here and a better subwoofer in here, I think you're going to notice the difference like real quick.
Yeah, that's the number. That's quite easily the number one is a subwoofer upgrade, and maybe 2. Although so this is a case where budget might be a consideration, and I would start with replacing the one that you have with one higher output sub. That this is a good scenario for that, and maybe in the future you add a second one, or heck, maybe you can afford 2 right away. But this is one where replacing what you have with a higher output, better offering than that BIC could definitely improve everything about your theater.
You've done well with the placement of your panels. The panels look like they're placed well.
I agree.
I think that cylinder sub right where your current sub is right here will have a slightly smaller footprint.
Yep.
And just be taller, and it's going to be fine. That little bear thing will sit on top of it just fine. If you look at the pictures, there's a polka dotted bear thing on it. There's lots of stuffed animals. This man either has children's or some weird fetishes.
He might just like the stuffies.
There's a little pink dollhouse thing in the back of one of them that looks really super cute. So this is the subwoofer is easily the thing. I think you've got a fine size TV. Yes, it could be bigger, but no, it doesn't need to be. I think you're sitting close enough to it, which is you're getting a decent size image. And
that's a nice TV. It's 4K HDR, Dolby Vision, all the things.
Yep. It's got all the things. So if you wanted to go Atmos and wanted to go with a receiver, I'd say fine. I would be okay with that. But I really think if you really wanted to do anything to make any changes to really improve, it's going to be a subwoofer.
Now, would we try to change anything about the layout of the room?
I can't see the rest of the room, so
not entirely.
Not entirely.
One kind of shot where we can see what. So there is a space over to the left, which is why he's put an acoustic panel on the right wall,
right? Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's exactly the right thing to do. So I mean, I suppose might not be impossible to reconfigure the room, but I'm guessing that wouldn't go over great with the rest of the family.
I don't care
Doesn't
about
usually.
how this thing is. I mean, this is fine. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
he could do is rearrange it so that the TV is on what is now the right wall.
Yeah,
You could do that. That's
maybe.
and then then your seating would be in the middle of the room and kind of block off that space, and then you got to worry about where your surround speakers are going to. I just think it's not worth the hassle.
I know. Yeah. I tend to be in agreement. I mean, even though, so if I were building a theater from scratch, this is not the way I would position things.
But if this is the house I was given, this is a reasonable placement of this home
Exactly.
theater.
Exactly.
He's not right on the back wall. He's off a little bit. He's put some
And
panels
he's put the panels
his,
behind him.
panels behind his head.
Big
So
deal.
I think he's done the best with what he's got here, and I'm okay with it. And good job, by the way.
Yes,
Good job.
absolutely. Well, he says he's been listening for a while, so yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, we're giving you a thumbs up, and the thing that jumps out at us would be a subwoofer upgrade. Yeah.
All right, let's do Caesar. It's only one question. We'll be done.
It's the last one. Holy crow, we're gonna clear our topic list. It's crazy.
Caesar has had the unfinished room that was 23 feet, but only 8.5 feet wide for the first 11 feet, and then 10.5 feet wide for the remaining 12 feet. We told him to consider a false wall so that all of his seats could be in the wider portion while keeping the screen size and distance looking correct. He did that and also went with our monoprice in-wall 12-gauge speaker wire suggestion. Now he likes some suggestion for Atmos speakers. One issue is that his ceiling is only 6 feet 8 inches. He knows we recommend an outdoor speaker depot for affordable in-ceiling speakers. His other speakers are Wharfdale Diamond Series, so we think he should opt for in-ceilings or regular speakers mounted on his ceiling. 6 foot 8 inch ceiling, you should go with in-ceiling speakers.
Yeah, that is the minimum height allowed. That is as low as the ceiling is allowed to be.
You're gonna get some tall fool in there who's gonna bump his head on your speaker, and that is not gonna be fun. So
yeah, I mean, like even if you like flush mounted NHT Super Zeros, that still got you like below 6.5 feet. That not a great idea.
Yeah.
He was saying in his email when he looked on Outdoor Speaker Depot that most of their in-ceiling speakers were out of stock and they didn't have an ETA, but I just checked today and the MK650, which is the model I recommend most highly from them, is in stock and available right now as we're speaking. So the stock, whatever the supply problem was, seems to have been resolved. The one that I like, the MK650, is there for $100 a pair. So 2 pairs of those shouldn't be breaking the bank. $200. Yeah. For 2 pairs. Yeah. I would go in ceiling in this case, and those are the ones I'd go for, the MK650s.
All right. So next week we won't have any questions, so I guess no podcast next week. Sorry, guys.
We've been sent I think two have come in today.
All right. Well, if you want your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week and start first by thanking our patrons over at patreon.com, our 58, 57.
It's 57 now, yeah. It went up to 58, then it went back down to 57. Somebody was like, I like these guys. No, I don't.
Thumb down.
But thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. We very much appreciate the support.
We want to thank Heath, Ted's wife, Chris, Caesar, and Ron, Patrick, and McMahon Chris for supporting us in non-monetary ways. Thank Heath for talking us up to AV Science and SVS. Ted for talking us up for Accessories for Less. Ted's wife.
Well, not Ted, Ted's wife. Yeah, that's right.
Chris for talking us up to Accessories for Less. Caesar for talking us up to Monoprice. And Ron, Patrick, and McMahon Chris all for helping, attempting so far to help my son out with his gaming PC, and Patrick in particular for supposedly, I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm sure it's on its way, sending us a GPU, a graphics card.
Yeah, I'll say the names again. Heath, Ted's wife. I don't know her name. One day we'll probably learn it.
I do know her name, but if he wanted us to talk about her name, he would probably have.
That's absolutely right. Chris, who also talked us up to HSU, as well as Accessories for Less. Caesar, and Ron, Patrick, and Chris, thank you all so much for the support. We greatly appreciate it.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.